When You Disappeared by John Mars. The story opens 25 years ago on an ordinary June morning in Northampton, England. Catherine Nicholson, a deeply stressed but resilient mother in her early 30s, wakes up to find her brooding, handsome architect husband, Simon, gone. He has vanished without his wallet, keys, or running shoes, leaving Catherine alone with their 3 young children, James, Robbie, and Emily, and their dog, Oscar. Panic quickly sets in as days turn into weeks. The police, led by Simon's childhood friend, the steady and observant Detective Roger, search everywhere to no avail. The village turns on Catherine, with Simon's weak-willed father, Arthur, and his loud, overbearing stepmother, Shirley, openly accusing her of murdering their son. Left in financial ruin, Catherine loses her beloved cottage to the bank. She is forced to sell everything she owns and takes a grueling job at a local supermarket to keep her children fed. Adding to her silent agony, Catherine miscarries a pregnancy alone in a bathroom, flushing the remnants of a trauma she keeps hidden from the world. Just when she hits rock bottom, she begins sewing clothes for her neighbors. Her impeccable craftsmanship catches the eye of Margaret, a glamorous, cigarette-smoking boutique owner who becomes her mentor. Through sheer grit, Catherine builds a highly successful dressmaking business, eventually buying Margaret's boutique and expanding it into a nationwide empire. Despite her success, tragedy continues to stalk her. She is diagnosed with a severe brain tumor. However, this dark chapter introduces her to Dr. Edward Lewis, a dashing, gray-haired surgeon with a gentle demeanor who not only saves her life but eventually wins her guarded heart. They marry in a fairy tale ceremony in New York, and Catherine finally finds the piece that Simon stole from her. But Simon is not dead. Unbeknownst to Catherine, his disappearance was a meticulously calculated escape. Deeply depressed and feeling suffocated by a secret he believes he uncovered, Simon walks away from his family to completely erase his identity. His first stop is a London prison to confront his biological father, Kenneth Jagger, a dying, withered, and violent career criminal who had murdered Simon's mother. Simon cruelly taunts Kenneth before slipping away to France. There, he works at a dilapidated coastal hostel until a fellow traveler named Darren Glasper unexpectedly dies of a heart attack in his sleep. Seizing the ultimate opportunity, Simon steals Darren's passport, adopts his identity, and sets fire to the beautifully restored hostel to sever all ties to his past, fleeing to the United States. Simon's American journey is a hedonistic blur of drugs and meaningless sex designed to numb his conscience. But his past violently catches up with him in Key West, Florida. While sitting outside a diner, he is spotted by Catherine's fiercely loyal and bossy best friend Paula, who is on vacation with her husband, Roger. Paula, who is secretly pregnant, confronts Simon on the street, slapping him and demanding to know how he could abandon his grieving family. Realizing Paula will expose his new life and drag him back to the misery he escaped, Simon makes a chilling split-second decision. With cold detachment, he shoves Paula backwards off the curb directly into the path of an oncoming van. He doesn't even flinch at the sound of her breaking bones, simply turning his back and walking away, leaving her to die in the street. Fleeing the murder, Simon crosses into Mexico and finds work doing maintenance at an upscale brothel run by a stern madam named Lola. Here, he becomes utterly captivated by Luciana, a breathtaking, olive-skinned Italian prostitute with an aloof and hardened demeanor. Their bond is sealed in blood when a monstrously large client violently attacks Luciana. She defends herself, bludgeoning the giant to death with a heavy lamp. Without hesitation, Simon helps her bury the body in a shallow grave, watching in awe as she shoots the corpse in both eyes to make it look like a cartel hit. Deeply in love, the couple flees to Italy to claim Luciana's late abusive father's estate in Montefalco. For the next 2 decades, Simon lives an idyllic, wealthy life under a forged passport, running a sprawling vineyard and raising 2 beautiful children, Luca and Sofia, with the woman he considers his true soulmate. But karma eventually arrives when Luciana is diagnosed with terminal cancer. As the disease ravages her body, Simon lovingly cares for her until, unable to bear the agony any longer, she begs him to end her suffering. Simon administers a fatal overdose of morphine. Before she dies, Luciana extracts a final promise from him. He must return to England and make peace with Catherine. 25 years after he vanished, Simon, now a wealthy-looking, graying gentleman in a Boke suit, knocks on Catherine's door in Northampton. Catherine is utterly paralyzed with shock, which quickly curdles into white-hot rage. She invites him inside, glaring at the stranger her husband has become. Simon, whose mind is slowly unraveling due to a recent Alzheimer's diagnosis, attempts to explain his departure, recounting his travels, his new Italian family, and the murder of Paula. Catherine is physically sickened. She vomits in the bathroom upon learning that the man sitting in her living room brutally murdered her pregnant best friend to protect a lie. Demanding to know the catalyst for this decades-long nightmare, Catherine forces Simon to explain why he left in the first place. Simon reveals that on the night of his 30th birthday party, he walked upstairs and caught Catherine in their bedroom with his ruggedly handsome architect husband Dougie. Believing they were having a passionate affair, Simon's heart was shattered. He confesses that days later, driven by blind jealousy, he ambushed a drunken Dougie in his kitchen, beat him to a pulp, stabbed him to death with a bread knife, and buried his body in the local woods beneath a faded blue rope. Catherine listens to this confession with mounting horror and contempt. She looks at Simon with utter disgust and reveals the devastating truth. She was not having an affair. On that night, Dougie had cornered her, pinned her face down to the mattress, and violently raped her. Simon had stood outside the door, misinterpreting her muffled screams of agony as moans of pleasure. His entire reason for abandoning his family and murdering his best friend was built on a tragic, sickening misunderstanding. But Simon is not finished. His mind must unburden its darkest secret before the Alzheimer's claims it entirely. He reminds Catherine of the horrific day, 14 months after the rape, when their toddler Billy tragically drowned in the bathtub while Catherine was on the phone. Catherine had spent decades tortured by guilt, believing her momentary negligence caused her baby's death. Simon looks at her with vacant, watery eyes and shatters her reality. He confesses that he had walked into the bathroom and found Billy playing with a toy boat. Believing Billy was the bastard product of Catherine and Dougie's affair, Simon felt nothing but festering hatred for the child. When the toddler slipped and fell face down in the water, Simon simply stood there. He watched with cold, calculated indifference as the baby struggled, gasped, and ultimately drowned. Only after Billy was dead did he pretend to perform CPR, breaking the infant's ribs to sell the illusion of a desperate grieving father. The revelation that her husband intentionally let her baby die snaps something deep inside Catherine. Letting out a primal scream of pure hatred, she launches herself at Simon. She pummels his face, scratches his eyes, and smashes a heavy metal picture frame against his head. As Simon cowers and begs for forgiveness, pleading that his disease is eating his mind, Catherine grabs a heavy brass fireplace poker and shatters his wrist. Bleeding and broken, Simon begs her not to let him die without her forgiveness. Catherine spits back that he doesn't deserve the easy way out. She wants his disease to slowly rot his brain until his only remaining memory is of the baby he murdered. She throws him out of her house and collapses in grief. Bleeding and disoriented, Simon stumbles through the village to the local churchyard. He finds his own empty grave, a memorial Catherine had erected decades ago simply to give their children closure. Swallowing a massive, lethal handful of pills washed down with whiskey, Simon collapses on the gravel chips and desperately tries to bury himself with his bare hands, slipping into unconsciousness as the sun sets. In the aftermath, Catherine is found in shock by Edward, who immediately summons the authorities. The police locate Simon in the graveyard, barely clinging to life, and rush him to the hospital's intensive care unit. Meanwhile, Catherine gathers her adult children and reveals the entire horrifying truth about their double life, his murders, and his deliberate role in baby Billy's death. Armed with the truth, she makes a calculated decision to protect her family. She will lie to the police, feigning ignorance of Simon's survival until the day he arrived at her door. The police subsequently excavate the woods and discover Dougie's skeletal remains right where Simon left them. Seeking final closure, Catherine and her son Robbie visit the hospital where Simon lies dying from sepsis and his intentional overdose. Robbie feels absolutely nothing for the bruised, swollen man in the bed and leaves quickly. Catherine lingers for a moment as Simon, in a rare moment of lucidity, reaches out and begs for her forgiveness one last time. Catherine leans in close, pretending to offer grace, before her voice turns to ice. She whispers that she will never, ever forgive him for murdering her son, and that the world will be a better place the second he is dead. Simon lets out a defeated groan as Catherine turns her back on him forever. Days later, Simon dies alone. His Italian children, Luca and Sofia, travel to England, meeting their half-siblings and a surprisingly welcoming Catherine, bridging the gap between Simon's two fractured lives. With Simon's ashes eventually scattered in Italy, Catherine returns to her peaceful cottage, finally free from the ghost that had haunted her for 25 years, ready to live the rest of her life surrounded by the people who truly love her.